Hey guys, it's Kaylee, and today, a couple nights ago, I finally watched Abducted in Plain Sight on Netflix. For those who know me, I am a huge true crime fan. I am all about that life. My mom, when I was growing up, was always watching Unsolved Mysteries in 2020 and stuff like that. She was like a huge true crime person, forensic files and stuff, and I guess it kind of rubbed off on me, and so now I am all about true crime. And I used to think I was kind of weird, but it seems like it's kind of a thing now. Like, there are actually true crime conventions and stuff like that. So that's interesting. But anyway, off topic. But I had this documentary in my queue for a while because it was true crime related. Obviously, it's about an abduction. And I've heard some people mention, like, no spoilers or anything, but I've heard some people mention some crazy stuff about it on Twitter and stuff, and like, oh, it's so crazy and there's so many twists and turns. And so I was like, okay, I gotta check this out. And yeah, I was not disappointed. And I wanted to film a video, but I didn't really have time because I gotta get ready for work. So we're just gonna kind of multitask right now, and I'm gonna talk about it while I get ready for work and do my makeup. So this is kind of a get ready with me chat thing. And I have my nice potato face going because I'm going to do my makeup, and I'll do my best to hold everything up and show you what I'm using in case anybody is interested. But I'm not a beauty guru, I'm not a beauty YouTuber or whatever, so I apologize if I mess up or forget to do that. So basically, if you haven't watched this documentary yet, I highly, highly, highly suggest you go and watch it before you watch this video, because I am definitely gonna spoil it. And if you are a fan of true crime at all, I very highly recommend it. It's so hard to describe. Like, I was describing it to my husband later, and he was like, what are you talking about? But it's like, it's very entertaining in a way, but it's also like one of the most incredibly frustrating things I've ever watched. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Also, just as a side note, I have eczema really bad, or maybe even psoriasis, I'm not sure, in certain patches all over my body. And right now, one of my favorite places to get it is like right near my scalp line. So if you see any like giant, heinous, like dry skin flakes just hanging off my face, know that is my eczema. It's not like my dandruff because I don't wash or shower or anything. It's like eczema that comes back no matter what I do. So I apologize if that grosses anybody out. But so, yeah, this story, it's basically the story about a family who befriends another family. They become very, very close, particularly to the father of that family. And over the course, well, pretty early on in the documentary, actually, like from the beginning, you find out that the dad from the other family, they call him B. His name's Bob, I think, but they call him B as a nickname. You find out that he has a sexual obsession with the family's oldest daughter, Jan, and you can kind of see where that's going, and he ends up abducting her, but there's just so many crazy elements to the story that make it not a straightforward abduction story. So many people have been giving the family, like the parents, hate about how irresponsible they were, how bad their decision making was, like how they could have let this person get so close to their family, get so close to their child. And I completely understand where that's coming from. In all honesty, I really like the family. Like, I really like the parents. They seem like very sweet, very loving people. But that doesn't mean I don't criticize their decisions as much as everyone else is, and I don't fully believe that they are deserving of that criticism. I think they're good people, and I think like their love for their family and for their daughter is unquestionable. You can tell how much they love each other and they love their family, and they were just trying to be good people and like be good to everyone basically. But I don't know, I felt when they were talking to the actual woman who was the little girl who was abducted, I just felt so bad for her and how her parents like failed her in so many ways. But so yeah, they like the first thing that really like the documentary pretty much starts off at the beginning. Like, it gives you a little bit background. It gives you a little bit of background on how close the two families were and how much everyone loved and trusted B. And so it made sense, you know, in the family's logic, why they were letting him be close to their daughter all the time. So, but then it just kind of, the documentary almost kind of starts, like, it gives you a little introduction and then it goes right into the first abduction. And yes, I said first because there was another one. And the first thing that really floored me was the parents saying that when they figured out, like, he was supposed to be taking her somewhere for the afternoon and then bring her home before dinner. And, like, you know, dinner came and went. The evening came and went. They still weren't home. Like, the next day came and went. And, like, basically a few days passed before they even thought to, like, call the police or the FBI and, like, do something about it. Which was just utterly bizarre to me. Sorry, I had to pause to do my eyebrows because apparently it requires an immense amount of concentration for me to do my eyebrows and I can't talk at the same time. But yeah, so that was the first thing that really, like, I was freaking out about, because I'm like, how, like, your kid has been missing for a couple days. How can you not, like, be going insane looking for them? Because, like, I don't even have kids. I have nieces and a nephew that I love very much. And then I would be going insane if anything happened to them. And I'm as someone who's entertaining the possibility of maybe having a child someday, I can only imagine, like, if I trusted someone to take my kids somewhere and they disappeared and I haven't seen them in days, you know, if I couldn't get a hold of the police or the FBI and I couldn't get them to help me, which is one of the things they claimed, that, like, the FBI doesn't work on the weekends or something, I guess. So they were just like, oh, we'll just wait till Monday to call them. And it's like, no, I would be out in the streets looking for my kid. I think any logical parent would be doing that. And these people were just, like, super casual about it. They're like, oh no, I'm sure he'll bring her back. You know, everything's fine. He wouldn't hurt her. And even the police, when they came to help these people and they were interviewing them and stuff, the police were saying that they had to tell them that their daughter had been kidnapped and convince them of that because they didn't want to believe it. They were like, oh no, he's just taking her on a little trip or something. Like, we're sure it's fine. And they were like, no, he took your daughter. She is your daughter, not his. He has no right to take her. And they were, like, really hesitant to believe that. And then you start getting into the crazy way he brainwashed her. Like, he convinced her that aliens were like, she was part of an alien race and it was part of her destiny to try and, you know, save this alien race. And the only way to do that was, of course, to have sex with a middle-aged man, because why wouldn't it be that? And it was just insane. And I was also kind of, I'm not trying to victim blame here at all. I just thought it was really strange that she kind of accepted this brainwashing story so easily, it seems like. Because she even admits herself, like, she was pretty quick to accept it, and she was like, oh yeah, well, this was similar to the story about Jesus I was told every Christmas, that, you know, like, Joseph took care of Jesus, but God was his real father, and all this stuff. And like, I know she was a child. She was 12 years old. Kids believe in things like Santa Claus and stuff like that. Like, they don't have the reasoning skills. They don't have the resources, especially back then. They didn't even have access to the internet or whatever. So, like, it makes sense that she would be, you know, ignorant of certain things, and that she would be more susceptible to believing certain things. But it was just hard for me. I don't know, maybe because I was always kind of like a little bit of a rebellious kid, and I questioned everything all the time. It's kind of hard for me to understand when I hear stories about people being indoctrinated or brainwashed. I think it's hard for everyone to imagine that, because you've never been in that situation and you don't know what it's like to, like, have stress put on you and stuff like that, and make you say and do things you wouldn't normally do. But I don't know. I think that was part of the documentary that was a little bit interesting to me, that, like, they don't really touch on at all, was that it seemed to me like the family's religious faith and their belief kind of made them more susceptible targets of this guy. And you know, I'm not a fan of traditional religion, like, I'll be honest, but I'm not a person who likes to shit on it either. Like, I don't care what you believe as long as you're not hurting anyone else. But I think in this case, like, the documentary glosses over it, like, it doesn't really focus or mention their religious belief. Like, it does mention it, but it doesn't really talk about in the ways that it seems like it contributed to their vulnerability and made them more susceptible, like, more naive targets to this guy. Because I think part of the reason he was able to get so close to them was because he was a member of their church. He was a member of their faith. I think they were Mormons. They lived in Utah, I believe, and its other church was Latter-day Saints. That's Mormons, right? I'm not completely sure. But that was part of the reason they got so close to him so fast, was because they were like, oh, well, he can't be a bad person because he's a member of our church. He's a member of our community. He's active in the church and all this stuff. And then hearing the daughter talk about how readily she took the indoctrination about this alien stuff because it reminded her of stories she had heard about the birth of Jesus. It kind of struck a chord a little bit in me, like, I wonder if this family would have been such easy prey if they hadn't have been a religious family, if they were taught to be more critical thinkers and more, I don't know, doubtful and questioning of things like that people were telling them. Because it seemed like they were extremely gullible, like beyond any amount of gullible I've ever seen. And they were just willing to accept anything or anyone at face value. And that was a trait they kind of passed on to their children. But yeah, anyway, the whole alien thing, I was just like losing my mind. Like, oh my God, no, this isn't going in that direction. Nobody has ever done this to a child and it actually worked, but it fucking did, I guess. And then the whole part where he had taken her to Mexico, and I guess he'd married her in Mexico. And oh my God, the parts where they talked to his brother, to B's brother. Holy fucking shit. It is worth watching the documentary just to see this guy, because he is a character. He's not likable at all, but he is a character. Like, when he talks about his brother, he's just like, oh yeah, he was a pedophile. Like, he always had this weird interest in little girls, and I'm pretty sure he probably molested our sister when she was a little girl and stuff like that. And he's just very like nonchalant about it, and he's just like this, like, you know, real tough, macho, like grizzled old redneck guy. And he openly admits that his brother was a pedophile and he was weird and he didn't really like a lot of the stuff that his brother was into, but he openly admits that he still, like, you know, had a relationship with his brother. They did things together. He talks about his brother selling cars for him at a dealership and what a great salesman he was because he was so charismatic and manipulative, one assumes. But yeah, he's just like, he was one of the more interesting aspects of the documentary to me. And you definitely like kind of question his morals as well, because yeah, he had a pedophile brother and apparently that didn't bother him too much, but also because there's like a part like after the second abduction where he's talking about going and visiting his brother B, where he was living in a state park in a camper with I think at the time 13 or 14-year-old girl he had kidnapped yet again. And he was just like, oh yeah, I thought it was weird. My brother was living with this little girl and it was like kind of weird, but I had never seen him more happy in all his life. And it's like, great, thanks, I hate it. But yeah, there's so many times watching this documentary where I just wanted to like fucking throw my TV out the window. You have no idea. Like, if you, yeah, just be prepared. You might want to like strap your TV down while you're watching it. You will want to throw your TV out the window several times. I think that's just part of the normal viewing experience. But yeah, like, people, like, understandably, so many people are freaking out at and about the parents and just being like, how could you not see these signs? Like, how could you not see this coming? And it's like, on the one hand, I think you have to give the parents some leeway and understand that this was in the early mid-70s and it was a very different time. Like, pedophilia wasn't a well-known thing. Like, the parents were talking about how they didn't know pedophilia or pedophiles were a thing. And even, I was surprised they were talking to an FBI agent who responded to, like, when the girl was kidnapped, and even he was saying that he had no idea what a pedophile was. Like, he had been, you know, taught about child abductions and things like that, but he had no idea there was like a sexual component to that, and it like made his skin crawl because that was the first time he had ever heard about it, which was kind of mind-boggling to me. But yeah, I just think we need to remember that even though like the 70s doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but in terms of advancement and technology and information, it was a really long time ago. And, you know, we have like the Library of Alexandria basically at our fingertips now, like access to any kind of information you could want, basically. Like, you could study everything that someone would study to get a doctorate just on your phone or on your computer. And, but that wasn't the case back then. Like, people didn't know about these things, and it's something that's so ingrained in us now. I think especially in modern society with stranger danger and To Catch a Predator and all that, we're like actually super paranoid and super conscious about these things. We're very, very sensitive to it, to the point where even if a father is doing something perfectly innocent, like taking pictures of his kids playing on the playground, like someone might call the cops on him because a creepy guy's taking pictures of kids on the playground. It's like something we're so hypersensitive to now that just, it seems crazy or impossible to believe that we weren't always like that, and this is a relatively new thing. But like, people didn't know about grooming and stuff like that back then, and it's like almost common knowledge now. And even if you don't know about it, you can easily read up about it, you know, anywhere on the internet. But at the same time, like, I agree those things are the case, and we should give the parents some leeway in that regard. But then when you hear stuff about how this guy convinced them that he was in therapy, and part of his therapy to recover from his supposed own childhood sexual abuse was that he needed to be alone with their daughter, and he needed to sleep in the same bed as her and stuff. And they were just like, oh, okay, that sounds legit. Come on in. And at one point in the documentary, it talks about how at the height of him doing this creepy shit, he was sleeping in the daughter's bedrooms, like the daughter he was obsessed with, Jan, he was sleeping in her bedroom, in her bed or whatever, like 4 nights a week. And you're just like, you know, it's understandable that people are like, what is wrong with you? Why would you let, like, it doesn't cross your mind that this guy is creepy or weird, or that like his obsession or his desire to be around your daughter all the time might be a little bit questionable. And the parents even admit, they're like, well, yeah, there were times where we thought this was weird or it was kind of irritating, but we were just like, oh, you know, he's our good friend, he'll never do anything wrong or bad. And I think this case is really interesting also because it's not just the little girl that was groomed and brainwashed, but her entire family, like even the parents. And the daughter does say this to defend her parents. Like, I don't know if she has any raw or unresolved feelings about the fact that they failed her so tremendously and not protecting her. In all the interviews and stuff I have seen, she's very protective of her parents and says that, you know, they were doing the best they could, and they were victims as well because he was grooming her parents as much as he was grooming her, which is definitely the case. And in the documentary, when he started to seduce the mother, I wasn't at all surprised because that is a very common tactic of predators, is they will try to seduce the mother of a child that they have targeted because, you know, if they become her boyfriend, her husband, whatever, then they have like almost unlimited access to the child. So it's a very common thing. And then they have the cover of like, oh, well, of course I'm not interested in this child. I'm just close to them because I'm, you know, with their mother. And usually the mother like has a hard time believing that her partner is capable of doing this to her child because, you know, he's sexually active with her. He seems like a normal partner when he's with her. So that didn't surprise me at all when he started like targeting the mom and seducing her. But like a lot of people, what really did surprise me was when he started targeting and seducing the dad. So a lot of people make fun of the infamous, like, I reached over and relieved him scene. If you watched it, you know what I'm talking about. I don't think it's anything to make fun of. Like, obviously this guy was like seduced and manipulated just as much as the mom was. He seemed genuinely really broken and hurt by this whole experience. I think that was another weird thing that I noticed is like the dad he seemed utterly broken when he talked about this. Like, he was devastated. Like, he was just sick to death with himself that he would do something like that, not just engage in, like, it didn't seem like he was upset about the fact that he engaged in a homosexual act, which I think a lot of men, straight men that are brought up in, you know, a religious background, that would be the thing that would bother them. It seemed like he was most upset about the fact that he betrayed his wife's trust, and also that later on, when he found out all the horrible things this guy had done to his daughter, he was, like, sick with himself that he had engaged in a sexual way with the predator of his daughter that he was supposed to protect. And I can't imagine how terrible that must make you feel as a parent. But then the weird thing to me was that, like, when the mom was talking about and, like, reliving her being seduced by B and their sexual relationship, she almost seemed to recall it fondly in a way. Like, he was very emotional and sad and like breaking down and stuff when he was talking about this stuff, but she was very, like, almost robotic and just going through, like, talking about the things he did and the things she did and how it got out of control and da-da-da-da-da. But a part of her seemed like there were parts where she would talk about how exhilarating and fun it was, and you'd see, like, a little glimmer in her eye, and it almost seemed like she was reliving, like, these happy memories or something. It was very weird, and I was like, how can you, like, it would make my skin crawl and make me sick to my stomach to even think about and say aloud, like, you know, I was doing these things. I was, like, being passionate and having sex with the person that kidnapped and, you know, and was raping my daughter, my, like, little baby 12-year-old daughter. And the crazy thing was, I think, if I remember correctly, I think she had, like, a little bit of a flirtation with him before her daughter was kidnapped the first time, but she didn't actually have a full-blown affair where, you know, they were sleeping together and it threatened to break up her marriage and stuff until after her daughter had been kidnapped. So it's like, this monster already kidnapped your daughter. The way it sounded was that, like, originally her parents didn't really know the extent of what happened to her. Like, they didn't believe he actually physically abused or raped her. Like, they thought just because her hymen was still intact and she didn't have any bruising or anything, like, she was fine and he must have not done anything to her. And apparently they never talked to her about it or anything, or just had her see a therapist, which is another thing that just... It's like, not only did her parents fail her, but I feel like if law enforcement didn't suggest to them that they should put this child in therapy, I feel like they failed her as well. Like, everyone around her was just failing her so hard in so many ways. But yeah, if I think I'm remembering correctly, but if I'm not, like, call me out. But I'm pretty sure the mom started the affair with B after he had kidnapped her daughter. And even if she didn't believe he sexually assaulted her, she knew that he took her to Mexico and married her. So, like, what the fuck? What is going on in your mind? How can you live with yourself? How can you, like, sleep at night doing this shit, knowing this shit? Yeah, so that's a whole thing. And then once the parents reconcile and they're getting back together and they're kind of presenting a more united front against B, and the daughter is still brainwashed. That was like the main thing that kept, like, of course the parents' ignorance and their irresponsibility and bad decisions were, like, driving me crazy. But one of the main things about all that was driving me crazy is, it's like, why are you not putting this kid in therapy? Like they talk about taking her to the doctor after she was kidnapped the first time to make sure she's okay. But it's like, you don't think she would need a mental doctor? I understand that mental health still isn't greatly understood nowadays. And I'm sure it was way, way worse back then. And, you know, so many people from the old school and like older generations were just like, oh, we didn't talk about our problems. We just bottled everything up and carried on as usual because that's what we were supposed to do. But I was just shocked at how this little girl could get kidnapped, dragged to Mexico. She's gone for weeks or whatever. And when they find her, they found out this middle-aged man like tried to marry her and all this stuff. And she's saying these really messed up things about how she loves him and she wants to be with him and she wants to marry him and have his children and all this stuff. And you don't think, maybe I need to take this little girl to therapy and have her talk to someone who can say, you know, what did he tell you? What did he actually do to you? He's a liar. These are things he's lied about. Like, whatever he's told you, he was lying. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. It's bonkers. But, I will say part of this documentary that really amazed me was Jan herself. She's incredible. She's an incredible woman. To have gone through all the things that she went through and come out as a survivor, as a whole, well-adjusted person, man, she is amazing. And what amazed me most about her is, like I was saying, I was so upset that nobody was considering therapy for this girl and for her situation. And as far as I know, she never went to therapy. Like, they never mention it in the documentary. But she talks about how around the age of 16, like part of her brainwashing was that, like, she had to have a baby by 16 or the world was going to end, basically. And she turned 16 and realized the world didn't end. And so she started questioning things more and kind of deprogramming herself. And the fact that she kind of deprogrammed herself was like fucking amazing to me. That's like as a hobby, I like to read about psychology and psychological stuff a lot because I used to want to be a psychologist. So just from my layman, like, reading about stuff and everything, I understand how hard it is to deprogram someone who has been brainwashed, who has been given like a non-correct worldview. Like, that's some like Scientology shit. And she managed to deprogram herself, which was incredible. I give her so much credit for that. I can't believe she just was able to do that on her own. Maybe later she did get some therapy, I'm not sure, but just the fact that she was able to break it down for herself at such a young age too. And she finally started being honest with her parents, and she and her mom started going over her story, and they wrote this book together. And yeah, and they wrote a book about her experiences. And I think it's quite poetic justice that Jan telling her story and getting the truth out there is what ultimately led to her predator's demise. Because B was harassing her about putting this book out and, like, you know, giving him a bad name or whatever. And he was harassing her to the point where she got a restraining order against him, and he pretty much immediately violated the restraining order, and he was going to have to do jail time. And he was like, well, I'd rather die than go back to jail. And he committed suicide. And I just think there's something so powerful and empowering and poetic about that this woman telling her truth and telling her story, she basically slayed her own dragon, quite literally. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about it. I'm sure this is already quite a long video. I knew I was gonna have a lot to say, so I would be able to go through my whole like makeup routine while talking about it. But what do you guys think? I know since I was watching like a little interview with Jan post the documentary coming out on Netflix, and like I said, she's just such an incredible woman. And I guess since the documentary came out, her father passed away, sadly. And she talked about like all the hate and stuff her parents got after this documentary, and she was defending them, of course. And again, like, I actually really like her parents. They were very likable people, but I feel so bad for her and how spectacularly they failed her. And I can't think of any other way to put it. They just absolutely failed her in so many ways. But she was talking about how after her and her sisters graduated and moved out of the house, her mother went back to school. She became a social worker, and she actually started doing work with and advocating for missing and exploited children. And I think that's amazing. I think that's the best way you could have handled this situation and made things better for yourself, and kind of like heal yourself and your daughter, but also like, you know, help other people who are in similar situations and try and make sure that this doesn't happen again to other children. And I think that's also ballsy to go out there and like educate yourself and be like, this is what happens. This is what missing and exploited children go through. When you've been so close to that and that's happened to someone in your family, because a lot of parents don't want to know, you know, they just want to kind of shut down and not engage and not know what their kids go through because the guilt would just be too overwhelming. It also made me realize how much that kind of stuff is needed, how much even in our current society. I can't imagine how bad it must have been back in the 70s, but especially in like modern society too, it's like we need to make more safe spaces, more places for like exploited women and children to go, because like, what are your options? What do you do? What do you do in situations like this where you want to help someone and they are obviously in danger, but they've been indoctrinated and brainwashed to believe things that aren't true and to like not want help because they are in such a brainwashed state, and how needed more information and more resources on those kinds of things are. But yeah, those are my thoughts and feelings after first watching this documentary. Like I said, I hesitate to say it's entertaining because I hate that idea of other people's real lives being used as entertainment, people's real lives, their real tragedies. But the truth is, it is being presented to us as entertainment, and that is part of the value we get from it. So I will fully admit that yes, I found it entertaining, not in the way that like I love it and oh it was just hilarious and you know, just a barrel of laughs and all this stuff, but in the way that it kept me intrigued and engaged and very interested in the story. That's one thing I will say, it's an incredibly amazing, interesting story. I can definitely see how they made a book out of it because it sounds like a story in a book or something. But I was just so full of emotions after watching it, and yeah, I've kind of gone over all that, but I'm interested to know what you thought. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought. What was your take on it? Do you agree with my take? Do you disagree? Let me know. And yeah, and I kind of had fun doing this, so I might do future videos where I talk about things I watch or like true crime things or things like that, because like I said, that's stuff that really interests me, and let me know if it interests you too. And oh yeah, obviously this is my finished makeup, and I'll put my glasses on so I look like myself. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and you know, like the video, subscribe if you want to, if you did, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much, and never forget that you are beautiful just the way you are, and to always be yourself, and I'll see you later. Bye.